Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Wash, your trusted resource for the latest and greatest in public health and hygiene.
Today I'm joined by two of Meritech's hygiene experts. We have Allison Smith, Director of Corporate Success here at Meritech. Allison, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Abigail. I'm very happy to be participating.
And also we have Paul Barnhill, Chief Technology Officer at Meritech. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so today we're going to talk all about safety days. So I guess my first question is, what is a hygiene safety day?
Excellent question. What a Hygiene Safety Day is really a time when you bring your staff together. You really want them to really focus on the importance of hygiene and what that safety day training is going to be. You want them to come together and understand the why, but to also understand how they play that critical role in achieving that. But you do it in such a way that it's fun, it's interactive, it's educational, as well as tools that they can take away to understand their importance and their, again, key role that they play in safety in the facility. Hygiene safety is critical, how that affects both the products that they manufacture, how they interact with their staffs, as well as then how their hygiene behaves and their actions help ultimately their consumers.
So Paul, why does a Hygiene Safety Day matter?
It really matters, again, not only, participating and having one and interacting with it and making it fun and joyful and so forth, but it really shows the staff their commitment back to the corporate responsibilities within the organization. A lot of times, and some of the things I've spoken to very often is about creating that hygiene social contract. And this is really just part of that reinforcement of that in making sure that they really understand those critical roles. And you can kind of loop that together. We talk about different items of safety. We talk about hygiene in different ways. You may have that at a huddle talk. You may have that in passing. We have, again, the hard parts of it, which are procedures and things like that. But really what this does is it brings everybody together, that group collectively, to understand their roles. I've seen it being performed with, again, Meritech, where we're talking about, either hand hygiene and footwear hygiene and the importance and roles of that, doing simple things like playing hygiene bingo. But I've also seen it from the guys that provide the PPE, making sure that, hey, have you seen the latest and greatest hair nets that are no longer, now they're a total, almost like a face mask. So it's people getting used to it, so they are familiar with it. They're able to ask questions to understand exactly that. But the key is really about that, showing that corporate responsibility, understanding that corporations don't want to just produce rules and guides that everybody just follows and marches along. They want to be able to ask questions, be interactive, and participate in this so that they can also contribute to, again, the ultimate goal is making really safe, quality products for their consumers.
All right, and I know at one point you mentioned to me before, but that safety days kind of help form a habit loop. Can you explain that a little bit?
So a habit loop is really, it's three things. It's really about that cue, that routine, and that reward. I mean, the cue here is we know that we have rules that we have to follow and so forth. We then get into the routine that, I need to wash my hands, either manually for 20 seconds or using a CleanTech automated system that takes you just 12 seconds to use, but then also following the right order of PPE, donning all that stuff. That is really the routine, okay? But then the reward of that is understanding, like a hygiene safety day can really be somewhat of that reward where you're getting together, you're understanding it. Like, creating one of the things that we've talked about, in the future is recognizing people when they've been a hygiene superhero. This is really key at getting them aligned together as a group. And again, I'm going to talk about this. When you're talking about culture of hygiene, it's putting everybody in that line of a flat line of leadership. Your executives and your production workers are all on that same flat line of leadership. They all have that responsibility to make certain they adhere and create that culture.
So I know you just mentioned that it's creating a flat line of leadership, but who exactly participates in a safety day?
Well, Abigail, really safety days encompass everybody within the facility. So everyone needs to be present and involved. Just like the hygiene social contract, everyone has the same role when it comes to safety. So executives to the production team members all need to participate. And I think it's important for team members to see executives and middle management involved in these types of events.
So when exactly should facilities have safety days?
It really depends on kind of the company and what they do, and depends on kind of, how big the company is. Do they have 3 shifts? Do they run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? There's really not very many times. There are some really important times that they should do them. Obviously, when they're making change. When you're making maybe a global change within your organization, or you're changing maybe a process flow to where, hey, the hygiene process is going to flow through a different area, or we're switching to a different type of PPE, or we have removed manual sinks and we've put in automated hygiene. These are the times when you want to make that change. What you want to do is make sure that you're onboarding correctly. You can tie that together with a hygiene safety day to really pull those people together. That's when it's critical for that. But you've got to keep in mind, you have to keep everybody in the organization on that same line, okay? You may run 3 shifts. You may have to perform 3 different hygiene safety days, and pulling those people in to make sure that everybody, again, has got the opportunity to participate so that everybody is feeling included. One of the worst things you can do as an organization is exclude a group. That, they really don't have a whole lot to do with hygiene or safety here. We really don't need to. That's the last thing you want to do. Regardless of their level of involvement, everybody needs to be involved. Because, again, when it comes to best practices, when it comes to hygiene safety, everybody, again, is on that flat line, making sure that they're all key and pinnacle in their role.
Paul, those are great recommendations. And I would maybe just add, if you're looking for, a good month or a good day to host Safety Day, September is National Food Safety Education Month, so it might be great to plan it during September. Also, October 15th is Global Hand Washing Day. So if you wanted to host a safety day that had a particular focus on the importance of hand washing, October 15th could be a great day to select as well.
Those are actually fantastic suggestions, Allison.
So I guess the most important thing for us to know is what constitutes a successful safety day, and how do we have one at the facility?
I think there are a lot of areas that can contribute to a successful safety day. Most importantly, as both Paul and I mentioned earlier, it's really about getting everyone involved. Everyone needs to be present and reinforcing, because that goes a long way with the entire team. Also involve your vendors. They can help assist and reinforce how to use their items properly and safely. They may also have opportunities to showcase new safety items to consider. Use Safety Day as a time to really address safety incidents that happen throughout the year, and how you as a team can come together to learn from them. But having said that, it's also really important that as part of a successful safety day, that you keep things light and interactive, right? This is about having fun, making sure that everyone feels involved in the process, that they play a key role in safety, and that their individual impact is a significant contribution to the organization. So, find ways like Hygiene Day Bingo, or maybe giveaways, Safety Day participation t-shirts that can make it fun and interactive for everyone involved.
And we have that Hygiene Day Bingo available for you guys to download, so be sure to check that out as part of the Employee Hygiene Toolbox. So another thing is, how do you reinforce the lessons that you learn at a safety day with your team?
I think the way to reinforce that best is obviously in person. When you sit there and you recognize somebody for being that, again, that hygiene superhero, you help do that to bring them into that fold. It also helps. One thing I've mentioned early on within the toolbox is talking about that hygiene mentor. And that really helps people get to that level. One of the things that Allison and I have had the opportunity to host are actually with a couple companies doing hygiene safety training days. And where we're onboarding new equipment, we're really needing to make sure that people understand the proper use of the technology, the right steps, getting them involved in environments that's comfortable for them. Typically, we've done these during like an extended lunch hour or something like that, where they're able to participate. But the key of this, the entire key of making for a successful day, is really having that buy-in. Because if you have that ownership and you have created that culture that spreads like a wildfire through your organization, they're highly successful. And it can be anything from, like Allison mentioned, the right PPE being donned when it needs to be donned, or the changes in PPE, to something as simple as, hey, we're possibly changing the different solutions or something that we do. The flow in the facility. All these are pinnacle. And you get a great net result directly from your team members, because they receive that information, they expel that information, and it runs through the company and it becomes holistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul, that's a great point. And I often hear you talk about the 3 Ps for hygiene consideration: people, place, and product. And I think the same considerations certainly apply to safety, and the importance of reiterating those as an ongoing post the safety day event. Just making sure that personal safety is always a consideration, that safety of your team is a consideration, also being mindful of your environment and the safety challenges that may be presented in your surroundings. And then lastly, of course, the product, just constantly reiterating the importance of product safety and ultimately to your consumers and customers downstream.
Absolutely. Excellent point, Allison, because the 3 Ps can never not be considered when you're looking at your facility. And understand, it's not just like a rigid information, the people, the place, and the products. Food manufacturing is ever changing. We're reinventing technologies. Oh, now we're dealing with an allergen. Now we're dealing with a raw product. It ever changing. Hygiene has to be the same. You have to do that, and your safety days are the same thing. They're ever changing to make sure that you're adapting to the new environment wherever they're at. Excellent suggestions, Allison.
And one of the changes that we're seeing right now with a lot of food processing companies is the adoption of footwear hygiene programs. Can you talk about how that goes into a safety day, Paul?
We hear this a lot within food manufacturing. It's more and more the conversation around footwear. Do we use street shoes? Do we have plant shoes? Or do we have captive footwear? Those really are 3 distinct things. Obviously, street shoes are people's shoes. They buy them themselves. They just wear them every day in and out of the plant like they do. Then you have plant shoes, shoes that are purchased by the plant, but then that plant shoe is actually taken home, worn wherever. And then you have captive footwear, obviously meaning that footwear is purchased by the plant and so forth and stays within the plant. Okay? Those are all 3 different categories, but one of the things that often happens, especially when you're talking about plant shoes and you're talking about captive footwear, sometimes this is the opportunity within these safety training days. Still a hygiene issue, still has to be addressed as a hygiene issue, but that's one of the times when you can really get your employee to gather around. It's now something very personal to them. Whenever you do that and you create that behavioral loop, you really get buy-in. So you're really able to accomplish multiple things during those hygiene safety training days. You can address the footwear challenge. You may have different areas within your plant that require people to wear outer thermal coats or something because they're in a cooler or something like that. That's an opportunity at that time to be able to address that. Hey, I wear this often, but when I do this, I don't like this. You get that kind of information. And that interaction between employee and vendor and or team leader, you really get more information to make for a better quality system overall.
So how is Meritech adapting their safety days to the new environment that we're facing now with COVID and just extra attention focused on hygiene these days?
That absolutely is a conversation we're having day in and day out right now, everywhere from our sales team, both inside, outside sales, as well as our service engineers in the field, as well as myself down in engineering. We're having these conversations with customers, asking us, how do we adapt to this? And the communication is the same. We want to adhere to the best practices and best policies. Obviously, hygiene within food has always been at a high standard already, but we're having to make some minor tweaks and adjustments to exactly what is the flow of the people in the facility, how close, adhering to those social distancing rules of trying to stay further apart, adapting technologies, to put in social distancing shields between hand washing bays to allow people to come in, and then making sure that they're donning that PPE correctly. But I think the biggest thing that companies are having to adapt to right now is allowing for that time. Allow them the proper amount of time to go through the hygiene steps as they need to, so that they are adhering to these post-COVID-19 practices and what we've learned from that, to be able to get to do those tasks in hygiene, follow their proper PPE and donning steps, and then getting into the facility, but having enough time to do it properly while being staged and slow down. I think the biggest challenge some of the facilities have had, just from a mechanical aspect, is we just didn't have enough space to be able to do that. So that's the biggest thing where that time allows, is because the hygiene zone wasn't designed originally for having to do social distancing. Now you have to change it. But you don't have to just physically change the space. You can think about the people part of that. Again, the 3 Ps always come into play in everything we do. That you spread out the people a little bit more in start time. You shift it a little bit so that you can accommodate these needs.
Excellent points, Paul. I would also just like to add, our experience participating in safety days in the past really focused on hand washing as the core point, and that is such an important and critical element of the COVID conversation. But now it really has deepened and broadened our ability to be consultative, like Paul mentioned, talking about social distancing and how that has to be such a key element of hygiene nowadays, and even going beyond hand washing to footwear considerations and other elements of the entire hygiene process, really now needs to be an all-inclusive as our participation in these safety days.
Mm-hmm. And you guys both mentioned that you participated in safety days both before and after the current situation that we're going on right now. So what are the favorite activities that you've seen at safety days?
That's a great part. One of the things that we do is when we'll come in, obviously, we're onboarding a customer new. It's obviously showing and teaching how to use the technology correctly, especially when it comes to hand hygiene. This is unique for them. They've not been exposed to this before. And so that's participating in washing your hands, knowing the proper steps, how to use the technology correctly, but also seeing the interactivity between usually, which is the QA staff and their own staff directly, understanding when you do hygiene bingo, you're asking questions, you're wanting everybody to participate, having some type of, again, t-shirts or something that's handed out that, hey, we did really well. We were in a plant just yesterday that actually had said, we're essential employees. We worked through COVID-19. And to me, that ties exactly with this. They knew and recognized their staff that had to be there because of how critical they were during these times of COVID, that they need to be in that facility and continue to produce the food products that they do. That is pinnacle. That's exactly the way they do it. So when you make it that fun, you make it that interactive, you're able to really, again, bridge a gap that should never be there anyway between employer and employee.
One of the things that I've seen done at safety days that I really loved was the facility leaning on their vendors to really provide a lot of the education and support for that day's events, and even having cards that they would give employees to go around and participate, engage with each vendor or each table that was set up. They would get a stamp or a sticker for doing so, and at the end of visiting with all of the vendors and learning about safety products and considerations, they would turn that into the safety and quality team. There was actually a wheel of prizes, and they'd get to spin the wheel of prizes and select from a variety of takeaways that would help them reflect on what they learned at that safety day.
Excellent point, Allison. All right, thank you so much, you guys, for joining me to talk about safety days today.
Thanks, Abigail.
Thank you very much.
As always, you can find any of the assets that we talked about during this episode, such as the Hygiene Safety Day Bingo, on our website, meritech.com. You'll also find more information there about Meritech hosted safety days, so be sure to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Wash. See you next time.